Welcome aboard, it's Captain G with another end of turn summary for Barbarossa turn 3. This is a recap of both Flak 88's turn for the Soviets as well as my turn for the Axis. So, having won the initiative role at the end of turn 2, the Soviets started turn 3 with back-to-back moves. So that left Germany in an exposed position, and pulling forces out of Leningrad as well as out of Novograd. The Soviet Second Army here, which is massive, with 6 medium tanks, 4 light tanks, over 20 infantry, supported by air, came into Pskov and wiped out the 18th Army Group with Kleist. I think I only had a couple light tanks escape down into Rosinki. So that was a loss of an entire army group on the doorstep of Leningrad to that Soviet double move. The other significant loss to the Germans was down here. Paulus and the 6th Army crossed into Perkop at the end of 2 or at 2.1, and then the plan was at 3.1 to repair this bridge, the line of supply, and then reinforce with Messi and the Italians. Bring this army group down and reinforce them as we continued to push. But since the Soviets won initiative, they were able to take the group that had escaped, all the fast movers that had escaped out of Kiev, cut down through Donetsk, as well as the infantry from down in this area, overwhelm and destroy Paulus and the 6th Army. So it doesn't matter how you play the game, it seems Paulus and the 6th Army are always destined to be out of supply and destroyed by the Soviets. This time it was in turn 3 in Perkop, as opposed to later in the war in Stalingrad. So those were the two major hits by the Soviets in turn 3.1. In 3.2 then, trying to get a little bit of revenge, the Soviet Air Force as well as the Italian artillery took some pot shots, wiped out their self-propelled artillery and took out some infantry. The Germans also then did a combat move across the river, supported heavily by Luftwaffe 1, which is 10 tactical bombers, to crush the Soviet infantry that were here. The survivors retreated into Donetsk. First use of Soviet airborne dropped here to encircle Kyiv. So that group is out of supply and encircled, and they would disappear on the next Soviet turn. And then Gagarin, with heavy air support, tried to take southern Smolensk, was not able to do it. You only get one round. All of the attacking ground forces except artillery are at -2 when you attack into cities, so that made it very difficult. And he did shoot down, I think, one of my medium bombers with his air defense. So that was a stall, that was a delay, unfortunately. And then the Germans, as you saw, retreated in the north. On my turn, I had retreated from Tortu back to Riga, but this bridge is destroyed. So I can't do a non-combat move across a destroyed bridge, so I had to instead retreat here to Rosinki. The last attack that the Germans did of note is here in Rundstedt in the 7th Army. Now they could wait until the next Soviet turn, but if the Soviets somehow blew a hole in any part of the encirclement, that would keep these units alive. So we didn't want to wait. We went in. Fortunately, we didn't take any casualties, and took out East Kiev. Now we have the encirclement around West Kiev, as I said, and can attack across the river. So that was the main issue, main battles, main movements of turn 3. At the end of turn 3, Germany regained the initiative. The dice roll was 11-11, so a tie. And in the rule set, Flak 88 and I are play testing. If there's a tie at the beginning part of the game, Germany and the Axis get the tie. So what that will mean is now the shoe is on the other foot. The Germans and their Axis minor allies get a double move. Having just finished 3.2, we now get to do 4.1. So back-to-back turns before the Soviets can respond to what we did, which is great. It does mean that it's even longer for us to wait for this guy to go away. But it gives me an opportunity to capture this airport and this city by attacking across the river with the penalties. But if I can get these hits, I can capture this airfield before he destroys it, rather than having to rebuild it or repair it, which is what the Germans had to do with Odessa. So that could work in our favor. And it'll also give me an opportunity to reevaluate what's going on here in the north. Does Guderian try again for Smolensk? 2 back-to-back attacks before the Soviets get to reinforce. Do the Germans, these guys can now escape, but do I draw a defensive line across this river in the Baltics? Do I pull back even further? Do I hold the line here? And what do I want to do in the north? So I get a little bit of breathing room to set the pace there. And do I want to press my luck and continue to push Manstein and 4th Panzer Army forward? One limiting factor in all of this is the weather. 1 was good weather, 2 was rainy mud weather, 3 or more on a 12-sided dice would be cold weather snow, because we're now in November, December of 1941. And of course we rolled a 2. So all vehicles, including trucks, can only move 1 zone. So I can't really blitz to surround anyone, but I can potentially, 4th Army could move into Kursk, start driving towards these factories, or I could move into Alphabetograd, which is what we call this one that no one can pronounce, and make a push across the Don toward Baku or toward Stalingrad. Both those moves potentially risk overextending Manstein. This force in Donetsk has been heavily reinforced. I'm not sure if he could take out 11 infantry, but we'll have to look at that. The other impact of weather is all this air, including theirs, anything that is not at an airbase is grounded. So these fighters are grounded. All this air is grounded. When we look up here in the north, these fighters are grounded. These fighters here are grounded, but the Soviet Air Force in Leningrad is at an airbase. The Soviet bombers in Moscow are at an airbase. The German bombers in Danzig are at an airbase. And the German bombers and tactical bombers in Odessa are at a recently repaired airbase. So that's really going to be an interesting factor, is the limits on the air. So with that, next up will be the Germans. Turn 4.1, November, December of 1941. Germany has the initiative. It's rainy, muddy weather, so a warm winter. We had that last game. We'll see what the Germans are able to do with it. For Flak 88, I'm Captain G. Over and out.